Hey everyone, and welcome to another video here at Garage Dynamics. Today we're going to be replacing the MAP sensor vacuum hoses on your Mercedes-Benz S500 W220. Now, I bet you didn't know you had a MAP sensor, and you know for sure that you have a MAF sensor because I showed you how to replace it, or I showed you how to clean it. And MAF stands for mass airflow, and MAP stands for Manifold Absolute Pressure. So if you're ever on Jeopardy and you get a question like that, then you'll be able to answer it. All right, so in today's video, we're going to be replacing the hoses on the MAP sensor. And sometimes you'll get a check engine light and it'll say your MAP sensor is bad and you need to change it. Well, that may not always be the case because you could just have a really bad hose and that hose will start leaking and it'll just tell your MAP sensor, your MAP sensor won't get a good vacuum, and then it'll tell your computer that it's bad. So that's what we're going to be replacing, and it's a cheap fix. So, it's going to be like $4 to replace a hose and potentially get rid of your check engine light versus spending $50 to $100 replacing a good MAP sensor that doesn't even need to be replaced. Okay, so here you can see we're going to just replace this large hose first that sits on top of the engine right here, and you can use a pry tool to remove the hose. It's just kind of pretty easy. Just take your time. You don't want to introduce any nicks or anything into the hose like that. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to just get some paper towels and plug up those openings so that we don't introduce dirt into the system, because that will just cause more problems, and that's the last thing we want, to replace our hoses, think everything's good, and then have some dirt clogging some sort of opening, and then we have to spend hours and hours tracing it all down. And so that's what we don't want. So that's why we put paper towels in the openings so that dirt doesn't get in there. All right, so those are the three openings that we're going to be plugging up. And you can see right there, those are the vacuum lines that we're going to be replacing. So it's a good time to note which line goes to the MAP sensor and which line goes to the blue check valve. That's what I'm calling it. All right, so take your pry tool once again, and we'll just go ahead and remove the hose. And these hoses are not on there tight. You're not going to have to cut them or anything like that. They come off pretty easily, and you can see right there, that's the first hose. And then we'll just go to the second hose and remove them. Now, if your hoses are really old and really bad, then they might just break off on you without even doing, exerting much effort. So here you can see this is the blue check valve hose that I'm talking about, and just go ahead and disconnect that. Once again, it's really easy to remove. It's not difficult at all. And just go ahead and clean the nipple. And then now you'll see this is your MAP sensor. So we're just going to go ahead and remove that wiring harness bracket right there, that clip, and just set it off to the side. Just make sure it's out of the way. And now we can go ahead and pull out that hose. And you'll see it just slides right out, nothing too complicated. It's almost like a satisfying, feeling where there's nothing that's too difficult. Everything is just working and going your way. That's how this hose replacement is. But you'll see right there, if you look at those cracks on that hose, see those cracks right there? Air can leak through there. And what happens is when air starts leaking, then you don't have a good vacuum. And that's when things go wrong and your computer will throw a check engine light, and you'll go to the dealer and you'll spend all this money, and they'll replace the parts that are supposed to be, that the computer says is not working, along with the hose, and you'll just spend all this money when in reality it was just a $4 hose that you could have replaced and been on your way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to just take our E8 Torx bit right there, and we're going to just remove that bolt that's holding the map sensor in place. So don't worry, I'll put a link in the description where you can get some Torx bits to remove that bolt. All right, so right there, that's the bolt that we're going to replace, or remove, I should say. Hold on to that bolt. Don't throw it away, because we are going to reuse it. All right, so now you can see that the map sensor is off the bracket, and we're just going to go ahead and remove it. Now, I will say that the hose, this is a rubber hose, and it comes off fairly easily, maybe a little easier than the other hose. And that's because there's like this rubber O-ring ridge, and you can see right there how the hose just kind of stops there. And usually how map sensors work is they'll sit on like a throttle body or some sort of aluminum opening, and that little rubber O-ring will sit deep down inside and create a seal. But because it's going to a rubber hose, it stops. And there you can see that's the map sensor right there, and looks, you know, pretty good. It doesn't look bad. I mean, you wouldn't know it was bad. Usually map sensors, the voltage will drop or go really high, and that's when they go out. So you can see there's the new hose, the silicone hose versus the rubber hose. It's more flexible, and the silicone hose on the left, it's just thicker than the rubber hose on the right, and that's why silicone will just last longer in terms of, you know, vacuum lines, and silicone just has a higher heat resistance as well. So that's something to take note of. Now, I will say it is a good time to replace all of your vacuum lines if you start noticing that one vacuum line is just rotting away. Most likely all your vacuum lines are rotting away. So it's good, you know, to just spend a day, a weekend replacing all your vacuum lines with silicone. Now remember, oil and fuel, you don't want to replace those fuel lines and oil lines with silicone, because oil will eat through the silicone over time, and same with fuel. So there's special hoses for oil and fuel, and you want to make sure that you use those special hoses for the oil and fuel lines, and not replace your oil and fuel lines with silicone. So that's something to take note of. But you can see right here how I do the measurements is I just take the old hose and I size it up to the silicone hose, and then I make my cut. It's a simple process, and usually what I'll do is I'll add an extra centimeter or half an inch just to be safe in case I under measure. Then I have that little buffer to just kind of make sure that I'm okay. So you can see here for this, you know, it's the same thing for this blue check valve hose. We're just gonna go ahead and remove it and then size it up and replace the hose. And you can see right there, you see all like those little black pieces that are falling right there. That is just, once again, it's just a bad hose that's just deteriorating. I mean, it's, you know, it's been heat cycled over and over. It's been on the car for forever, you know, since I bought the car. And like, I mean, you know, you can see right there that the hose is just, I mean, rotted. So what we're going to do is we're just going to size it up once again. Simple, nice and easy. And just take our scissors there, go up a little bit more, just make our cut. All right. Remember also when you're cutting your hoses to set aside the hose for the map sensor and the hose for the blue check valve, because you don't want to mix them up and then put it all together and then have to take it apart again. And this hose right here, you can see that it's just molded into a U, and the silicone, you can't really do that, but it's so flexible that it's not going to matter much. See right there? So silicone is just really nice and flexible. That's one of the positive things about silicone, is just how flexible it is. And so it can really just conform to however you want to shape it, and wherever you want to put it, it just fits nice and easy. So that's a good thing about the silicone. And we're just going to go ahead and clean up our little valve there, just to make sure that dirt doesn't get introduced into the valve. Now I'm reusing the same valve, but if you want, since you're watching this video, you can buy a new valve. Another thing you can do, you just saw me do that, you can blow out any dust or dirt out of the hoses before you install the hoses. So you can either do that, with your breath, or you can take some compressed air and blow the hoses out, and clean them up just before you install them, so that you don't introduce any kind of little dirt specks into the system and cause further problems. All right, so we got our blue check valve hoses on, the new hoses are put on, and now we're just going to take our map sensor and we're going to put the new hose on the map sensor. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you feel like you want to put zip ties on the hoses, by all means do so. I'm going to put zip ties on just for a little added insurance. It's not going to hurt anything. And, just that added insurance is something that'll just help you just drive better, not worrying like, oh, did my hose fall off? And sometimes that can happen, engine vibration. So we want to make sure that we are driving reliable and safe. I will say that I'm not going to put zip ties on the end of the hose closest to the engine. All right, so I made one more cut for this top vacuum line, and I'll install that last. And you can see here we have everything set and ready to go. All our new hoses are put back on, and they look nice. All right, so you can see here, this is the original kind of like protective sleeve that the OEM hoses ran through. But the silicone hoses, because they're a lot larger, they won't fit. And that protective sleeve is like some sort of heat shrink. So it's hard. It's not soft and flexible. So, I'll put a link down in the description below for some heat shrink tubing if you want to replace the heat shrink tubing. But I'm not going to replace mine. I'm just going to get rid of it. And, another way you can go is you can just put zip ties. You can zip tie the two hoses together instead of using a protective sleeve. But I will definitely put a link for some sleeves down below, or a link in the description below. All right, so now we're just going to take our blue check valve hose and thread it through the way that we pulled it out. And, just take your time, because the way this engine is designed, it has a lot of pockets where dirt and dust can just collect. And so you don't want to scoop up a big patch of dirt as you're installing your vacuum lines. That's like the last thing you want to do. So just take your time and be careful. If you have some golf tees, now would be a good time to plug the hoses with some golf tees. All right, so here's our map sensor, and we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to thread it through, and you can see there's some dirt on the end of that hose, but it did not get into the hose, just kind of dabbed on the side there. And then I cleaned it as well. So, okay, just thread it through just like that. And now you have both hoses. And remember, the map sensor hose is going to go on the far right nipple, and then the blue check valve hose is going to go on the left. And then now we're just going to screw in that bolt and remount our map sensor to the bracket right there. And I'm just hand tightening this bolt. I'm not really using a torque spec, just hand tight is fine. And then just check to make sure it's not loose. All right, so now we have our hoses and they're just sitting there, and just kind of make sure you keep them organized. But remember, the right hose, the map sensor hose, is going to go to the right nipple, and the blue check valve hose is going to go to the left nipple. So it's good to organize them in that way. All right, so once again, I just want to emphasize this again, that the map sensor hose is going to go right there onto the right nipple. See right there? There we go. And then the blue check valve hose is going to go to the left nipple. And again, just mark the hoses in the beginning. Remove one at a time and then mark it so you know. And you can mark it any kind of way you want. Two dashes on the hose means right, and one dash means left. However you want to do it. But if you do it in the beginning, it will save you a lot of confusion later. So, all right, now we have our hoses put together. And again, I'm not putting zip ties down there, but I am going to just tuck the hoses underneath that wire bracket plastic covering. And now we're just going to take our third hose right there, and we're just going to plug that together. And here I just kind of cut it a little long, but not too long, but it's not enough to resize. I'm not going to resize it. I'm just going to tuck it in underneath with everything else, and it'll be good to go. All right, so now we're done, and we're just going to cut our zip ties here. I put zip ties on there, and we're going to remove our paper towels now so that we can put on the rubber top, the top rubber vacuum hose for everything. So now we're just going to tuck in that hose right there, the silicone hose, and you can see it just tucks in real nice. So I don't have to resize it or anything like that, and it's ready to go. All right, so here's our larger hose right here. We're just going to go ahead and just put everything back, just kind of seat it, get everything nice and in line, and then we can follow up with our pry tool and just press things back, permanently into place so that it seats nice and it has a good fit, an airtight fit. Yep, just like that. You'll see there's the pry tool, and you can just like really put that even pressure so that it slides in. Also, you can put some silicone on the insides of the rubber hose, and that'll help it slide in easier. And silicone spray is good for rubber. It's not damaging or harmful to rubber. Another important note, when you are putting on zip ties, make sure they do not point or touch opposing rubber. You can see right there, all my zip ties are pointing away from the rubber, the neighboring rubber, because you don't want that sharp edge to just vibrate and puncture the rubber or put a hole in the rubber or anything like that. So when you're installing your zip ties, make sure that they're pointing away. Another thing you'll see right here, also plug in that connector to your map sensor so that your map sensor will start reading again. And just take your engine cover, put it back on the engine just like that. Make sure that little male fitting fits in the female fitting, and wipe down your engine cover, because here at Garage Dynamics, we're all men and women of excellence. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped, and I'll see y'all in the next video.